Yes. Welcome. If you are, I think we are. I gotta find my screen that has the that has my feed. Modernization. And I'm live. All right. Welcome everybody. We got TJ, we got Nick, and we've got new players, and every time we do this, we get new players, and I gotta stop that. All right, new players and bigger players, right? So we got Jerry, you have been on Monday and Tuesday. Nick is new, and so is Thomas. You go by TJ, right, Thomas?
Sure.
All right. So TJ, let's do this. Jerry, we're going to start with you. Give a little introduction, a little bit of background, because I'm sure there will be people who don't know you watching. So take it away, Jerry.
Yeah. This is day 3 for me, so I'm kind of like old news, except for the new people calling in. So thank you, everyone who is joining us. My name is Jerry Danish. I'm the director for switchgear modernization here at Eaton. I've been with Eaton for 13, 14 years now, 22 years in the industry, focusing on a bunch of different aspects of my career, field service engineering to team leader to operations manager, and now to the position I'm at now, the director for switchgear modernization. So that's me in a nutshell.
That is cool. You in a nutshell. In a nutshell. Nick Tamburo. How's it going, Nick? Welcome to the program, buddy.
Thank you. I'm Nick Tamburo. I'm the production manager for the Power Breaker Reconditioning Center in Warrendale, and also the custom panel shop. I've been with Eaton for 23 years. I actually started out as a PBRC technician when they started the services group. I have got my engineering degree, moved into engineering, and came back to the PBRC about 10, 12 years ago to manage it. And as we evolved into switchgear modernization, became the production manager for the panel shop and Power Breaker Reconditioning.
Awesome. Cool beans. And we've got TJ in the house.
Thanks for having me. So TJ Large, I'm the production manager for the PBRC locations in both Houston and San Diego, as well as kicking off a panel shop here in the Houston area. I have 17 years in the electrical industry. Much like Nick, I cut my teeth in electrical in the Navy, and have been in this industry ever since. Have been with Eaton for just almost 8 years, all 8 years doing some sort of service operations business.
Cool beans. And you know what? I'm getting my coffee pot out because this is going to be a deep subject. And I know we're going to get technical real quick because I got some smart people, and when I'm the dumbest one here, I'm going to ask all the good questions, right? So excellent. So today's discussion is on reconditioning and retrofit trip units. So we talked yesterday, Jerry, about the whole concept of like a medium voltage equipment and low voltage assemblies, taking all the different components within, like whether it be the relays, meters, or if it's a circuit breaker. We talk about the cartridge and what a retrofill is, and then what's the other term? There's a retrofill and
direct replacement, conversion, retrofit. Yep. Yeah, a bunch of different terminology for it, but yeah, you're spot on.
Yeah. So now this discussion today is going to be focused on reconditioning, and you say retrofit trip units. So we're not reconditioning a trip unit, but we're retrofitting trip units. And when I hear trip units, I think circuit breakers. Is that right?
That's correct. So yeah, focus on low voltage and medium voltage. And the two smartest people in here, TJ and Nick, can walk through a lot of different functions with kind of our services and what we provide. But that's just it, right? Is maintaining that that piece of electrical equipment and keeping it in good operating condition. Because we work on a lot of old stuff. Put it that way, right? There's a lot of legacy items out there installed and still working today. And when they do break down, they need to get worked on. This is one of the many options that we can provide our customers from a solution standpoint.
Yeah, so electronic trip unit is not a relay. right? Those are two separate things. Electronic trip units would be something that's on a circuit breaker, whether it be a medium voltage or a low voltage. It wouldn't be a relay, right, TJ?
Correct. So when you talk about trip units, that's going to be specific to your low voltage breakers. Protective relays are more geared towards your medium voltage, which lives external of the actual breaker device.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. I'm looking for my my cheat sheet. Okay, so PBRC. It's not the Professional Bull Riding Club. PBRC.
No, not at all.
What's PBRC?
So that's just a fancy acronym because Eaton and loves their acronyms. Is a power breaker reconditioning center, and we do have 3 across the U.S. right now: Warrendale, Houston, San Diego. We will be putting one in here down on Greenwood at our power breaker center eventually, because we are expanding our facility, actually tripling the footprint right now, as our business grows. So yep. But right now, three in the books.
Okay, so power breakers, that is what we're talking about. We're not talking about molded case circuit breakers today. Is that right?
That is correct.
Correct.
That is
All
correct.
right.
And we can get into some of the code, which NEC defines what the equipment out there that we can recondition, and what equipment we can't. So yeah, which is a great point. NEC is, for many years was silent on kind of reconditioning services. And, I think about 2016, 2017, they put a lot more language into a couple of the articles on, what reconditioning is, more structured on approaches of, using qualified design parts and nothing kind of reverse engineered, and top of, what can be reconditioned and what shall not be reconditioned.
Yeah.
And, yep.
Yeah. And there's a few things. So the first discussion point has to be in what is reconditioning, right? So Article 100 gives us a definition of reconditioning, and I'll read it for you guys because I'm not sure if you probably didn't read it right before this, but I'm going to read it for everybody. Electromechanical systems, equipment, apparatus, or components, and that's a pretty comprehensive, that are restored to operating conditions. That's an important part of the pie, because some of what we're going to talk about today, like that breaker that's right behind TJ's head, okay, that power breaker right there, if it is in working order and we remove that and replace the trip unit on it, I don't know that we've technically met the definition of reconditioning, because we have instructions for retrofitting, right? So taking that brain and putting a new brain in, is that something that's part of the manufacturer's instructions? Anybody know? I would think so, right? I mean, we have retrofit trip units and we're following instructions on how to do that? Or is that something that we're just doing on the fly?
No, we have instruction books that come with retrofit kits, utility relay company and our own. Okay.
So that's probably part of the listing. I mean, if there's an instruction book, instruction books are usually specified by UL that are required to be a part of the product.
Yeah, correct, Tom. Yeah. So we do have, obviously the solutions when we do replace strip units, between retrofilling or upgrading or, replacing one for one, right? Maybe the trip unit just come in as bad and we replace that. That's part of manufacturer's instructions. And also we go through our quality checks too at the end, where we do put primary current through our breakers as part of our manufacturing instructions before they get shipped out the door, to make sure that everything in the breaker works, right? The CTs are wired up properly. The trip unit's tripping the breaker, is tripping at the right current levels.
Yep.
So that's just all part of the kind of manufacturer's instructions and our quality checks.
Yep. And it does say in now that's in Article 100, and then in Article 110, once you meet the definition of reconditioning, what 110 requires is that you put your name on it as the person who's reconditioning it. You have to remove the original listing mark for the circuit breaker, right? and or whatever it is that you're reconditioning. And then it's not until you get into Article 240 where we're talking specifically about overcurrent protection. You have 240.88, which deals with circuit breakers, and it tells us reconditioned equipment shall be listed as reconditioned and the original listing mark removed, and it says circuit breakers. The use of reconditioned circuit breakers shall comply with 1 through 3, and this is where it tells us that you cannot recondition a molded case circuit breaker, but you can recondition a low voltage and medium voltage power circuit breakers. And you can also recondition high voltage circuit breakers. That's because, I mean, that equipment's pretty, that circuit breaker behind TJ's head is I call them like the Swiss watch of breakers, because you can do a lot to those things, right?
Yeah, and this breaker here, we actually, this doesn't fall under what is our reconditioning standard. This is a Eaton Magnum. So today, Eaton's current standard power breaker.
Yep.
The service we offer on this is defined as remanufacturing, because it does not have the same componentry as vintage style power circuit breaker.
Ah, okay, that's interesting. So you there's a difference between reconditioning and remanufacturing.
Yes, from our guidelines, we have the componentry is slightly different, significantly different. You took a breaker from the 70s, has going to be mostly steel components, aluminum components, and insulation product. Where you take a modern breaker, whether it be our Magnum breaker or SPB, or even one of our competitors' lines where they have hard plastic casings or poly casings, not a traditional, what is a vintage power circuit breaker. So there's a little bit of change when it comes to that.
Okay.
So you can see on the slide that's on there. So we, class 1, class 2 is our reconditioning. Then you drop down when you get into like the breaker that's behind me. That's the Magnum, and that falls under our remanufacturing category.
All right. So you have a Magnum DS remanufacturing, and that's the Magnum DS breaker that was behind your head there. Right. Then you have the mechanism enhancement kit. What's that?
Want me to take this one, TJ?
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
We call this the MEK mechanism enhancement kit. It's a new operating mechanism from the plant that comes equipped with bearings that are packed with a special synthetic grease that and the actual mechanism is lubricated with this grease, and extends the interval for maintenance to 10 years or 5,000 operations.
Okay.
So that is like in addition to a class 1. That'd be like something that some customers will pay for.
I gotcha. And we were talking about that yesterday, Jerry, too, about the whole concept of extended life and time between maintenance, right?
Exactly. Yeah, which is a great solution out there, because you look at maintenance intervals, and if anyone out there needs to extend those maintenance intervals, or you're in a high profile facility, data center that taking outages every year is a challenge. You can extend those outage dates a little bit longer with some of these enhancements that we can provide. Gotcha.
And okay, so this was the reconditioning process that TJ was talking about. Now, this breaker is a lot different than the one that was behind your head, that Magnum, because this is an older breaker, or can you tell me a little bit about this one?
Yeah, so this one's more indicative of what we would recondition, where you can see it's going to have a steel frame. Most of the componentry inside the mechanism is all going to be some type of metal or alloy, which leans itself to the ability of being reconditioned. So our process is reconditioning. I want to dive into that now. Is taking it down to every nut, bolt, screw, and washer. I mean, taking that one item, that one breaker, and taking it down to its few hundred different parts and pieces.
Yeah.
Cleaning, plating, replacement of hardware, and then complete reassembly and lubrication of that unit. So much, a little bit different than what we can see with our remanufacturer, but a very in-depth process.
Okay, so it's almost like redoing an antique vintage vehicle, right? And bringing it all back to original. You go all the way down to the frame.
Exactly. I compare this to cars all the time. It is a heavily mechanical process, but it's a restoration essentially, right? You're taking something that's got, you talk about barn finds with old cars, but you'll get that with these breakers. That'll be, we call them a plant find. I've been in a paper mill for 30 years and never been pulled out of its cell. We have the ability to take something like that, get it showroom ready, and give it back to the customer and reset that life cycle on the breaker.
That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. I'm telling you, Jerry, we got to get Chip Foose involved.
Yeah.
Man.
But this, Tom, this drives another good point, right? So TJ is saying like, hey, we take this breaker down to 200 different pieces and parts, right? Mm-hmm. And then we start replacing some of these parts, and that's why us and NEC is so I guess stringent on qualified parts, right? Because if you replace a part that's not qualified, the whole mechanical operation of that breaker could be jeopardized. So it's critically important that we are using certified parts. And on top of, obviously we cover all, different manufacturers' breakers, across a broader platform. So we're just not, sole source to Eaton and, legacy Eaton, which is Westinghouse. Yeah.
And I love this, this photo right here because, it's a little blurry, but this one really shows what you're talking about in regard to all the parts and pieces that go into a circuit breaker. And now when a part like that is, when you take this apart, you take this whole structure apart, right? When you don't have a piece, is that something that you source somewhere? Can you fabricate something yourself? Well, how do you handle when, you have that one little plate that's missing or damaged?
The major manufacturers, you can get replacement parts, and some no longer exist, like Federal Pacific and things like that, where you have to get used reconditioned from the parts. But I just like to say that picture, that was me when I was a technician.
Oh, really?
I rebuilt that. That was an actual breaker I was working on. I rebuilt that breaker.
Yeah. Is that you in the picture there, Nick?
Yeah.
That's PB. Oh, that's PB.
98 or 99.
That's pre-beard.
No way.
And, well, you didn't lose any of your hair, so I can't go there.
Oh, no, it's going.
It's going. That's pretty cool. So you're an official Eaton model. I'm a hand model for Eaton. There's a video from 1995 where my hand was on a mouse inside of a picture. So yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
These pictures bring up a good point when we talk about reconditioning and our services. Is that in that picture there in that literature, those are not Eaton breakers. The important thing to talk about is we work on any manufacturer and any vintage power circuit breaker. So as displayed in there, these were AK breakers, both the one Nick was working on and the one displayed there. Not an Eaton product, but still something that we service regularly.
Yeah, I guess, to your point, a lot of these are not made any longer. And if we have, I like this right here because it shows the before, this is the as received, which is, it looks like it was in a fire or something. And then you have the nice pristine, look at that. Gosh, I don't know how you don't get guys coming in and wanting to do a 57 Chevy or something.
It was a very gratifying position. It's probably my favorite position I had at Eaton.
Absolutely.
Every 2 weeks you got to do this. And I wish I had the pictures from back in the day. Some of the stuff that I did, I actually took pictures of it. But yeah, it's you come in and to find somebody to be able to do this, it's they gotta have the right attitude and aptitude. You're not going to find somebody with experience with this kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And now the other interesting thing about this is that when you're doing this, and I like this photo for this discussion, you're going to take something that was built probably what vintage you think these are? 50s? 60s?
No, those are 70s, late 70s, 80s. Those are predecessors. Well, the DS was a predecessor of the DS2, and then we have the Magnum DS. So that's the history of the power breakers from Eaton.
I got you.
So that's a DS because I can tell from the secondary disconnect. It has a black disconnect. So I'd say maybe 80s.
80s?
Yeah, and the predecessors of those were the DB, started in the late 40s,
Mm-hmm.
and probably went up to the late 60s, early 70s.
And this is, I think that is, and you're going to go, oh, that's Amtector days, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
Oh no, well, that they used to have the
SST
the dash spots, yeah, before the Amtector. So the Amtector, I would say, probably started on the DS breaker. Then we evolved into the 100 series trip units, the 500,
yep,
and so forth, probably with the DS2s, and then the DS and the DS2, then the 10 series, the 510 through 910.
and the trip unit that's on this, which is this device right here, that's the brain. So you take a piece of equipment that was built in the 80s or 70s, whatever vintage it is, and you're updating it with the state of the art protection.
Correct.
You're putting that brand new brain on it that has all of the features. Now, what about the trip curves? I mean, do you redo the trip curves for these breakers, or are they pretty much the same as from a publication perspective as to what they were back then?
It's the trip curve, not for the breaker, for the trip unit is a standard trip curve that is for the 10 series trip unit. So it comes with you get a retrofit kit, you get an application data that has a lot of information in it. It's a real thick book. The installation manual for the technician, how you install it, and then you also get whatever style trip unit you have, the instruction book for the trip unit itself, 510, 610, 810, 910.
Okay. And since, go ahead, TJ.
Let's say, so, you're on this specific breaker, you go from Amtector to DS. So you do get it. The curve changes with the newer trip unit, but also with these retrofits and upfits, you get the increased modern protection capabilities such as arms, right? So you get that personal protection piece that's not accessible for your vintage equipment, but we're giving it today's standards of protection for equipment and employees.
Yeah. So
that's the point.
So when you think about the performance within a system, say I have a coordinated or a selectively coordinated system, the flexibility of the new trip units will probably give me an advantage. I because of the tightness of the curves and because of the response times, I'll probably have a better chance of achieving a higher level of coordination because I can fit in between upstream and downstream devices. My point is, I'm not risking the performance of the system by doing this. I'm probably enhancing it from a reliability perspective in how they open.
Definitely. You're getting, yes. I mean, we go back to cars all the time, but imagine what the safety features are in a car from 1970, right? You barely got seat belts. Today, we're taking that car where it's got, anti-collision protection, it's all these extra features. That's what we're giving in these newer trip units.
That's a very good point. Like you say, brakes and all that stuff, all the safety features. And you mentioned arc reduction maintenance switch. How about zone selective interlocking? That's probably comes with the trip unit, right? I mean, if you had all the other devices, you could probably do ZSI in that assembly if you wanted to. We'll see why you couldn't.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have all the basic, all the cool features of the latest, and so you take an existing product like this one. You get it, and that's an Amtector on there. Look at that. Yep. Yeah. I got one of those. I got one. I used to take tech calls when I first started with Eaton. I was on the APSC, Advanced Product Support Center, back in '95, and I used to have to try to tell people how to program them. That's how you learn this stuff. You take questions, right? So we take it all down. So anything else on reconditioning? So yesterday, Jerry, we talked about taking a piece of equipment, putting a cartridges in, basically putting in a new breaker into that assembly. This is, you've got your assembly. I'm going to take the existing breaker out, recondition it, and put it right back into the same slot, right?
Right. So you can do a 1-for-1. Just keep the old trip unit on it, or as we all kind of talked about, we can enhance that trip unit to give you, better selectivity for coordination, new safety features, and also on top of a lot of these now, depending on what trip unit you go with, has communications. So if you need to have better insights to your electrical system, or you have a control room, or any power monitoring system, all this can be wired into that to give you, kind of like I said, better insight to your power system and what's going on.
What about interrupting rating? Can I change the interrupting rating of that breaker?
We do not change.
We don't change that.
On the stuff y'all talked about yesterday, rating of equipment. We have the ability for our engineering study team to look at gear, say it's rated at 65K. They can do bus brace analysis. We can up change that to 100, 150, 200, whatever they'd like, and put the associated breakers in it. But the interrupting capability, we up the breakers, because that has to do with the amount of copper that's inside of the breaker and the bracing itself.
Excellent. Okay, cool. All right, so I can get the same voltage rating, same current ratings, different trip characteristics. I can add all the functions of communications, arc reduction, maintenance switch, zone selective interlocking, all that great stuff. I have the same interrupting rating, but to your point, TJ, and what we talked about yesterday, I could increase the SCCR rating of an assembly with an evaluation, but that's not what we're talking about here. Cool. And I can make it look like it's brand stinking new. I love it.
Right.
And can you add the feature? Here's the other thing. So I'm thinking, I think that I see, I don't know if I see this or not there, but right, is that the drill for automatically charging or no?
Charging motor.
Is that the charging motor?
Yes, it is.
If it didn't have a charging motor, can you add that after the fact?
Yes, you can do manually to electrically operated conversions. I'm actually performing that here for Chicago Airport, 99 breakers as part of a class 1 reconditioning. It's like full blown. It's class 1 reconditioning, MEK, which we spoke about earlier.
Yep.
They want the MEK Mech. It's a trip 910, converted from manually operated to electrically operated and arms. So it has arc flash reduction maintenance switch. It's like the whole package.
Is this something that they send this back to you, or can you do this at their facility?
We do it here at the PBRC.
All right.
That would be too intense to do in the field.
Yep. Okay.
And before we move on for this, I guess the one thing we haven't talked, we talked a lot about the breaker work itself, but the value add of what we do from a reconditioning standpoint is the increased uptime and reliability of equipment. The customers, if you wanted to replace it with a new breaker, if we have the roll-in replacement option you talked about yesterday, but they have we talk about good, better, best from the solution standpoint. This is one of probably the better of the good, better, best that we offer, in that the customer doesn't have to change their existing gear to get the modernized capabilities. They can take out and do one for one, or we can send them, we can actually build up breakers, send them out a breaker, and they can just do an exchange program going forward with reconditioning.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. And then this is a class 1.
Correct. So as you were talking about the low voltage air replacement breakers,
Yeah.
all the ARs with the Magnum, so they have a design for that DS to replace that. As long as if it was a standard 520 or 520 trip unit on the Magnum, you could still send that in the DS breaker and get it reconditioned and keep it as a spare, because there's nothing is done to change the cell. So you could take the cassette and the Magnum out and say you want to do maintenance on it and use your old breaker as a spare. Now, if you got into communications 1150, 910, no, then you'd have issues. But standard breakers, yeah.
And the reason the communications presents a challenge is that because the wiring from like the communication module on the trip unit into the gear.
They have two. The 10 series trip units use Incom, and Magnums use can't think of it.
Is that RS-45 Modbus?
Modbus.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, Tom, we talked a little bit about right? As in like direct replacement breakers that, hey, you can take a direct replacement breaker, stick it in there. However, you had a problem or issue or need to take that breaker out, you can stick the old breaker back in. However, if you need to do any of that communications, or if you're, converting that breaker from, manually operated to electrically operated, right, then there's the kind of the challenges behind why you couldn't stick the old breaker back in.
Right, right. And then just help me understand when you do this. This would definitely be considered reconditioning, right? So I'm knee deep in the definition of reconditioning. I'm knee deep in the relabeling of the equipment of this breaker with my label, telling everybody it's reconditioned, all that good stuff. What are the additional tests that we put this through? Because we can't do destructive tests, right? But what tests do we do? As after we get this thing done and we put it on the dyno?
So when we receive a breaker, first thing we do is test it. So if it's electrically operated, we'll operate 5 times min max and for the open, charge, and close. We also do, we will do incoming primary injection testing if you're retaining that trip system. But if you're retrofitting it, there's no benefit to testing the old one. So we look at that. We do high potting, and then what typical field service people do with the ductor to measure contact resistance on incoming, and we do an installation resistance test measure. So we record all that. So after it goes through the entire process and it's rebuilt, it looks like that, and it goes in the final test, all those tests are repeated. You get a before and after picture on a test form that's stored in a database that you can get electronically, but we also attach them to the breakers when we ship them. You see before and after. And one thing I forgot to mention is we do a trip button force with a force gauge before and after, so it gives you some kind of mechanical indication of the operating mechanism has improved through the cleaning, processing, and relubrication.
Okay, so what you're saying is when you say mechanical, you're talking actual how much pressure it takes to press that button.
Right.
Okay. Is that in a part of a standard that tells you how much pressure you can't exceed?
Not that I'm aware.
Okay. So we basically want to get to a pressure point that we do with our standard breakers. We know what those numbers are, and we try to make this to make sure it's in those tolerances.
Right.
That makes sense. Okay. So we do, you said 5 times and 10 times?
No, we do 5 open, 5 close. So you're gonna be operating and charging it each time. So
okay.
Do the same thing on outgoing. So they do at rated voltage and min max. So 5 min, 5, so it'd be like 15.
Okay. When you say min max, you're talking min max voltage, or
yeah. So
okay.
Some stuff's rated 85% minimum. You know what I mean? So
gotcha. How much current how much current do you put through it to get it to stop? I mean, you don't put no 100,000 amps through it, right? So you're hitting it with lower currents or testing.
Oh, you talking about primary injection testing or electrically operating?
Primary injection testing.
It's based on for a DS breaker, if it had 10 series trip unit, it'd be based off the CTs and the rating plug and the settings of the trip unit. So you get a DS 416 with 1600 amp CTs and a straight rating plug, which I mean by straight is 1600 rating plug, 1600 amp sensors. Because on the DS and DS2 retrofit kits, you can have 1600 amp sensors, but have a 1600/800 amp rating plug.
Okay.
The people will do that for coordination purposes. But we would test it based off these things to explain is you have a 1600 rating plug. All your test values would be based off that 1600 amps. So you get 120% of long delay pickup. They do short time. So it could be anywhere. Like we typically do, of course, if the customer has, we try to duplicate customer settings. If it came in and they upgrade the trip system more, we try to duplicate what the old one was set at if we can.
Right.
Now, being said, if they have instantaneous set at 10 times and it's a 4,000 amp breaker, after we recondition it, we're not going to put 40,000 amps in it because it just kind of defeats the purpose of the reconditioning. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But we will set it up to go at that level. But yeah.
Okay, I gotcha. All right, so you're testing the CTs, you're testing the mechanisms, you're looking at the trip curves, and to your point, you're making sure the trip curves align with what was way they came in, whatever those settings were. But somebody would still want to look at their selective coordination study to make sure that it's set appropriately when it's installed for the long time pickups, long time delays, and all that good stuff, right?
Correct. That's where our PSE group comes in, Power Systems Engineering.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So reconditioning. What else on reconditioning for the class 1, which is I guess it's like a complete rebuild there. Anything else? Should we bring in? I see a reference on 110.12a. 110. I was on the wrong one. 110.12a, mechanical execution of work. What is NEC 110.12a? Unused openings? Was that something you guys wanted to talk about, or is that just or is that a leftover from one of my documents?
That might be a leftover.
Okay, I just want to make sure. All right. Labeling breaker is reconditioned. Oh, NEMA policy. We talked about NEMA has a policy. That's what drove the reconditioning and, the requirements in the National Electrical Code. But when you talked about contact resistance and measuring that, is that something that's coming out of like NEMA AB4 on how we determine the contacts and whatnot, the condition of the contacts? Or how do we know what our parameters need to be? Is that something in a standard?
Yes, I'm not
familiar with that, so I couldn't tell you.
Okay. I thought you mentioned contact resistance. That's why
I did mention we measure contact resistance as in micro ohm level of the contacts when the breaker's closed to see before and after the condition of the breaker. So it might come in with 60 microamps and go out with 18 microamps.
Okay, gotcha.
And that's just from the cleaning of the contacts. Residue builds up over time. So.
Yep. So Frederick Fowler says, when we get new medium voltage and or reconditioned breakers, we still have a NETA tester come in site to test before we install in any cubicles. So Frederick, I'm not sure what organization you're with, but yeah. So once we do all of our stuff and we test all of our breakers, whatever is done at the customer site, everybody has different preferences and different desires with regard to what they want to do after the fact and initial testing. I don't know, Nick or TJ or Jerry. What I'd say
that's a good practice, right? Because we're putting these on pallets and we're shipping them across the country. So it's not a bad thing to have them tested again. We know before they leave our facility that they're tested and they function properly. It's definitely probably a best practice. Now, in regards to NETA, I would say, NETA is an accreditation that our field service team could do the same work. It's really having any electrical tester would be good. The NETA, anything can be tested to a NETA standard. I'd say our field service, if we're reconditioning, I would definitely recommend to utilize our field service organization to take a look at it as well.
Cool. Excellent.
Tom, the O'Hara breakers we're doing for the International Airport, we're testing them here, primary injection testing them here, and then creating them and sending them to our district operations center in Chicago, our dock.
Yeah.
And the field service engineers there are uncreating them and primary injection testing them again and testing them. So that was part of the contract with O'Hara. They wanted them tested here, of course. We do that. They also wanted the additional step, what TJ saying, to test them at the local facility.
Okay, and I can understand why that would be smart. To your point, TJ, it's a Swiss watch, and you're shipping it, and it's a big Swiss watch, right? So I get it, and and that's always good to have your checks and balances. And it's a very good point that we also have a field services division that is separate from the guys who actually are redoing this, and they do field work all the time with for customers, and they could do that for them as well. So awesome.
Certainly, and one thing that's nice about that is, we do ship them with test sheets, but let's say the receiving person at your facility misplaced those. We use the same database as our field service organization, so they have the ability to go back and look and see what it left our facility at from a testing standpoint. Compare that to the field, what they get in the field. So there's some benefits to the continuity of utilizing our field service organization.
I like it. I can always say we got to promote the using our guys in the field because they do a great job. Okay, so anything else on reconditioning and the process for a Class 1 recondition?
So not the process, but we also offer a pretty good warranty on the Class 1 reconditioning too. So that's kind of another nice offering, to prove our work, stand by our work. That what's a 3-year warranty with Class 1?
Okay.
Correct.
What, how many years?
Warranty on 3-year on breakers. If they're using it as a contactor, we only provide 12 months. That's just because the life and brutal living of a contactor breaker is significant, and we actually have a different solution. We try to push customer towards if they're utilizing a breaker as a contactor.
Really? What's that?
Well, we talked about that yesterday, Tom.
I know. I'm thinking. I thought it was still.
It's quiz time.
It's quiz time. You forget I have a FIFO memory. Okay.
Yeah, we offer the low voltage vacuum replacement breaker.
That's right.
It replaces the mechanical, your traditional breaker copper components with vacuum bottles, and that has the more robust operation life cycle.
Yeah. All you had to do was say snubbers, and I know because whenever you get into those vacuums, we're starting to talk about the snubber actions. Okay.
There you go.
Oh man, see that? I'm not as okay. Well, that's okay. That's why we do this. Anything else on reconditioned? On Class 1. What's this? Class 1, 1G, 2, and 3. So, oh yeah, there we go. Boy, look at this. Class 1G. This is an adder. This is the annual upcharge. Is that what we call that? No?
Now, the Class 1G is similar to the Mech MEK program. But how it differs is the MEK, you're getting a brand new operating mechanism from the plant. Class 1G is we're going to recondition your operating mechanism, and then we're going to install those bearings with that special grease and lubricate it with that special grease on the rebuild.
Okay. Existing bearings and grease extends the lubrication interval. And the bearings, help me understand, the bearings that we're talking about help glide that breaker in and out? Or is this something that...
No, this is bearings that are part of the operating mechanism.
Okay. The opening and closing of those contacts. Right. Very mechanical. You know, when I first started at Eaton, I came from an architectural engineering firm. Electrical engineer is my background, power systems engineering. So I was really, and at the time it was in '95, so it was right after the acquisition of Westinghouse. So I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going to meet all of these electrical engineers, and these guys are like the sharpest knives in the drawer, right? And here I am, the sharpest spoon in the drawer, right? And everybody I met, I kept saying, you know, are you an electrical engineer? Like, no, I'm a mechanical engineer. And I meet someone else, I say, electrical engineer? No, I'm a mechanical engineer. And everybody was telling me they're a mechanical engineer. And finally, I forget who it was. I was like, I haven't met an electrical engineer yet. And they were like, well, Tom, did you ever look at a breaker? It's a very mechanical device. There's lots of springs and levers in there, which is true. So bearings and grease are not in my vocabulary unless you put a resistor on it. So, but that's why I'm not doing this. And you guys are. So how do we extend the lubrication interval to 10 years? Is it the type of grease we use?
Yes. And we perform life cycle testing on this as well as MEK.
Excellent. That's a Class 1, and there's a Class 2, 1G, Class 2. So this is totally different than a Class 1, right? This is not a little addition.
It's similar in aspects. It's similar to both a Class 1 and Class 3. So, say customer sends in a breaker. Sometimes also we call it a T&I, it's a test and inspect. They just want us to advise what it needs. what level of reconditioning, what repairs. Okay.
Mhm.
So the breaker goes in some really good shape, but the operating mechanisms come up from
Okay.
not being serviced for years. Right? So instead of doing a full blown class one, we'll offer a class two MECH option, and that's focused on the operating mechanism and racking mechanism. They split the breaker frame.
Yep.
So the whole front of the breaker is disassembled just like a class one. The only difference between this and a class one is we don't send the steel off for plating. We just clean it in house. And when we rebuild it, you follow the same class one procedures with the lubrication and all that stuff. The rear portion of the breaker would just, we form a class three with it as an assembly, which is just a preventative maintenance. So it's just a combination of two, because sometimes and then they do the opposite. If your contact resistance is very, very high, your ductor readings are very, very high. And we would do the same thing, split the frame, but now we're going to take apart all the current carrying parts and insulating pieces and process those as we would for a class one. With the same exception, nothing will go out to be electroplated.
Okay, so if I would do a class three if I have a piece of equipment that just hasn't been exercised, and like you said, it's going to be a part of a preventative maintenance type of schedule. I could get a class three. Like if I did a class three review like every other year or annually or something like that, then I would be avoiding a class one complete teardown possibly because I'm doing
Well,
something.
I'd say over time, eventually it will have to be like anything's going to service. But and then the other thing I point out, class three or field service people can offer that on site because the only thing you might see is with class three, we will primary inject the trip unit, for low voltage break. They may secondary injection test it because they're out in the field, and primary injection tested, it's so big and hard to get on the site. But.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I would say to talk about that, like it is definitely something that can be done in the field to an extent. But what we offer from the PBRC standpoint of our class three, the cumulative experience that's inside of our facility. So we eat, sleep, breathe breakers. Where our field service has a big offering, a lot of stuff. When you send something in our facility, you're sending it to the subject matter experts of the breaker. So what we see on a day-to-day, what we see in a week, a field service guy might see in a year. We have a lot of experience. I mean, look in this case, Nick's on the publication document from 1998, and he's managing the group that's there. So we have a lot of experience. We have several technicians who started with Nick. Houston and San Diego both have two different 20-plus year technicians who kicked off this business, and they're still a part of the organization. So what they have to offer and what we can see and do in a class three and be able to help the customer with bettering their product it is really unmatched.
Yeah. That is a very important part, especially when you're dealing with vintage stuff, because if you it's one thing to say, I've never seen this breaker before and try to figure it out. It's another thing to say, yeah, I've done that breaker 6, 7, or 100 times, right, over the years, because everyone's probably a little different, I would think.
Certainly. When you get into manufacturers, and being that we service all of them, there's almost, I don't want to say endless because it's not, but it's a substantial amount of different types of breakers that are out there. When you look at, Eaton has a pretty simplified line and done really well with their products. Some of our competitors, Siemens, AK, I swear there's 50 different AK models out there.
Really?
One letter of a breaker, and Nick can know this from a couple months ago. One letter of a breaker, it's a completely different animal. It's a different size frame. You'd think an AK-30 and an AK-30S might be the same, but they're not. And our team has that experience and knowledge.
Wow.
I would say to TJ's point, if a lot of customers, but they're going to retrofit the breaker to upgrade to a more modern trip unit, and they're sending it in for a class three, they'll send it to the PBRC so we can fully test it when it's done. So we do the class three here and install the retrofit kit.
Cool. Now the Magnum breaker is the one that was behind his head, right? That's the Magnum DS. you can
Yeah,
still.
that's our current power breaker in production, but it's hitting a 20-year point for this breaker. It's been out for a long time, and we're starting to see where there's been a value in offering another service for this type of breaker, and that's where the remanufacturing comes into play.
Wow, yeah, 20 years. I mean, I can remember when we introduced that. That was a long time ago. I didn't think it was 20 years ago. Jeez, man, I'm feeling old.
Right, and like how things have changed. So we were looking at the DS with Class 1 reconditioning. We would take apart the operating mechanism and process it and rebuild it. With the Magnum DS manufacturer, we just replaced it with a brand new operating mechanism. The levering in or the racking mechanism is replaced with a new one. So we're replacing assemblies. And when I do shop tours all the time, I always equate it to, when I was in the Navy and I was going to electronics school, they taught us to troubleshoot to the component level on a circuit board.
Yep.
Now everybody just throws the circuit board away and replaces the entire circuit board. That's sort of what this is. Yeah. That's what it's evolved into. And the funny thing is, like, I remember these came out 20 years ago because I think I was still a technician in the shop. But this is the stuff we're seeing more. Me and TJ were talking before this call earlier. We're just seeing more and more Magnums now. I'm thinking back like 20 years ago, we were seeing Westinghouse DH, Westinghouse DB stuff. We haven't seen in my shop in like probably 10 years. Like DA and DK breakers, which are like from the 20s, 30s.
Right.
They're done. I mean, they can't do anything else with them anymore. I'm still, some people still use some of that stuff, but.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm sure it probably comes in waves because, like you said, you're coming into 20 years now that we've had the Magnum out there. So you've got a lot of facilities that have hopefully done maintenance. But what I'm learning is there are a lot of people that aren't doing the proper maintenance. And then when they either they find out about it because they're trying to open it, or it cleared a fault but took longer than what they thought it would take or whatnot, then they have to send it out and get it looked at and redone. So the good thing is that like to your point, the Magnum, we still make all the parts. So it's more just change out this whole group here and put a new one in, as opposed to what you do in those older breakers. But I'm sure we'll probably start seeing more of these coming in because they've just been out there a while.
Correct.
So.
One good thing about the Eaton products is we can go back to the DB breaker and still get new parts from the Power Breaker Center in Greenwood as part of our group that do the rolling replacement breakers.
Yep.
They have the DB line down there and DHP, which was the predecessor of the vacuum bottle VCP and then VCPW.
Yeah.
So we go back that far.
Eaton,
Our competitors,
Eaton has a hard time letting go. I mean, from a product line perspective, I know I used to get beat up on that all the time. Like they'll say, just discontinue it. You're like, no, there's people out there that need it. And in fact, I was in the Beaver plant, and there is you can still buy old molded case circuit breakers. The black cases that have been, I couldn't even tell you some of the model numbers because I haven't heard them in so many years. They still they still make that stuff. And I've talked to a lot of customers that say, well, I've got these old Westinghouse breakers. I'm like, well, we probably still make them in the Beaver plant. And there is an area in that plant where we still make that stuff. And now it sounds like you can still get the older breakers down in the Carolinas. It's a good thing for the customer. It's a hard thing to justify from a manufacturer's perspective. So that takes a commitment to say, I'm still going to make those old devices because you don't have the volume, right? It's not like you've got people on a line that are just pumping like hundreds of these or thousands of these out. That is a true commitment to say, I'm going to still produce these things for existing installations. So pretty powerful. Anything else on Magnums? We can change out trip units, right? So I could take an old Magnum, put a new trip unit in it?
Yeah, we'll get to that. We get to the trip unit upgrades. Yeah, but it's not so much about, imagine Magnum's going to have the most modern trip unit we offer in it. So it's highly unlikely, like it's more of not a retro fit like you would with a Digitrip.
Right.
You'd just be replacing it for a component that may have failed. The one thing I was going to point out is there's like one time there's over 40 styles of operating mechanisms for the Magnums. And with that jig you see there to the right, that's actually an operating mechanism taken from the breaker on this jig, and then we can press the closing spring and remove it safely. And so we keep springs in stock and shims, and based off the color of the spring and the amount of thick and thin shims, we can take a standard operating mechanism and convert it to the mechanism we need.
Okay.
So it saves time on lead time. So waiting until the breaker shows up to find out. People aren't going to know which model number operating mechanism they have, right? So it just saves some time.
So this frame down here is a jig,
right?
And you mount this in there, and it helps you. Okay, I got it.
You move the spring and then reinstall.
Okay, that's cool. And I guess this is a jig too down here then.
Yes, that actually our tech center, technology and quality center had that designed from an outside firm, and actually when we launched this program, we worked with them to launch the Magnum DS remanufacturing program to get their blessing. And I was visiting a tech center. They had two of these. They gave us one. We since had another one made for Houston, but the movable contact assemblies have a bunch of individual contacts on them. There's springs behind them, spring loaded. If you try to take this thing apart without pulling those contacts in place, the springs are going to fly everywhere when it comes off. This safely keeps everything in place as you open it, and then you can disassemble the contact assembly for processing.
That's why I have magnets in my garage, because I'm always dropping stuff. Absolutely. Cool.
And the difference is these only come with a 1-year warranty, because that's the same as a brand new Magnum DS from the factory. Just to pay the same warranty.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool.
But you get the same warranty as a new breaker. So
yeah, that's pretty cool. That's good. It's really good. Okay, that's the Magnum, and then we got the MEK, and we talked a little bit about this earlier because I sort of jumped right into that. But this is, I mean, that's a big one. That's another big. What is that? That's a DS breaker there, right?
That is.
That's a DS2.
Yeah, I think because of the blue cover.
Yep.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, I had to blow it up. I couldn't even see it. Yeah. So this is MEK. So we said this is not a. This isn't the Class 1 reconstruction. This is the. I think did you say this is just looking at the mechanical mechanisms and getting that back up to running?
Well, sort of. This is like an upgrade. So you're going to pay in addition to the Class 1, because you're getting a brand new operating mechanism built from the plant that contains the bearings that are packed with the synthetic grease, and the synthetic grease is used when they build that mech. So you're getting a brand new mechanism with that grease to extend the maintenance intervals.
Gotcha. And this is the mechanism right here. And then it rides in between these two plates. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the Mech side sheets.
Okay.
There on the left. Yeah.
Yep. And then your bearings go in these in those two holes. Are the bearings actually mounted here, or are they mounted in the plate?
There's bearings mounted in the plate and in there. So there's a few different. A few of those holes are for bearings.
Okay.
Like
this one here. It looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually. One of them actually has 2 bearings in it, if I remember correctly.
Sweet. And then so we extended from 5 years, 5,000 operations, 3-year warranty. So it's like a brand. I mean, when you get done with it, it's like a brand new breaker, basically.
Right.
Yeah. Synthetic, placement main bearings. All right. MEK. Anything else on mechanism enhancements?
This is just really focused around those locations that know they have high operational uptime requirements. So if you're looking at doing a class 1 recondition, think about your maintenance intervals, think about your ability and flexibility for downtime, and then make that as part of your decision. If you know you haven't shut your switchboard down in 5 years, maybe when you're doing class 1, this is a good opportunity to take advantage of that.
Okay, Ronald Ramirez says he had one of those not holding, and all he did was grease the spring mechanism to get it to hold. Now let me ask you a question about that. If you had a breaker, when he says not holding, and I'm thinking not staying closed.
That's what I'm thinking.
That's what I'm thinking. So now let me ask you something. If you have a breaker that's experiencing that, in my mind, that's telling me you probably need to get some sort of level of an overhaul on it, right? And right. I don't know if would you call that a class 3? Would you call it? It's probably not a class 3 if it's in relatively decent shape. Or not a class 1. It's probably a class 3 or a class something like that.
It could be a class 2. It depends. It sounds like it hasn't been maintained and maybe or exercise, which is important. You know, if people put a breaker in the cell, close it, and leave it closed for a year, so things kind of gum up in there. That's what that sounds like. The grease is gummed up. Yeah. And before you spray some kind of lubricant in there is enough to free it up, but eventually it's gonna bind again.
Yeah, it's also important to consider environmental conditions too. Some of these industrial facilities that you go to, the switchgear, the switchgear room and the gear could be in very hot conditions, very dirty conditions, and they can drop to lower temperatures. So that all plays in a part of maintenance, right? So things like that affect the circuit breaker operation, especially when they get dirty. That's the biggest thing. So that comment right there is, that makes me think that, hey, there's dust and dirt in this thing, hasn't been operated a long time. Maybe it's in, a basement somewhere. It's not HVAC controlled room that would cause this type of issue.
So now let's say that Ronald says, okay, you know what? I had to do this. I got it back up and running. And now I should probably schedule something, right? So let's say I'm having a planned outage. And I'm going to do a class 3 overhaul on this, and we're gonna get Chip Foose in, and we're gonna do a class 3 overhauling your breaker. How much time does it take? I mean, we talking a week worth of time, a day, 4 hours? What are you talking on a breaker like that to do a class 3?
I mean, it depends on what our current backlog's like at the time, how many other orders we have, but a class 3. I mean, in an ideal world, you could do it in a couple of days.
Couple days? Yeah. Okay. So in some of these planned outages, that's not a bad deal. Now, what if, and Jerry, I don't know if, what if I sat down and said, look, I want to buy a spare. Can somebody still, do we find these and put them on a shelf, refurbish them, and say, okay, if somebody needs this DS and this amp rating, I can get this to them so they can have it in inventory so we can swap it out. Do you do anything like that?
Yeah, we can. We typically don't carry our own breakers in inventory, but the solution is that, hey, we can go through your electrical system and take a look at all the different types of breakers that you have. Hopefully, we talked about this before a couple of times, is that, you kind of standardize on one breaker, and, maybe you have a, 1600 amp breaker that's pretty common through your electrical system. Yeah, get a spare and change it out and rotate your breakers out, and that saves outage time, right? So you rotate a breaker out, send it back to the PBRC, do a class 3, 2, 1, whatever you want on it. And then you'll just move on to the next breaker, right? Yeah. So you're rotating your breakers. You're doing that preventive maintenance. You're interacting with the gear. You're doing you're opening and closing it. You're exercising it, and on top of, you're kind of getting new breakers back depending on what type of solution that you want.
Yeah. So if they found say this DS, if you found somebody another plant or even within your own family of plants, wherever you can get your hands on a DS. And to Nick's point, or TJ, I can't remember who it was that said, look, we take these older breakers, like those barn finds, right? You find something that you'd say, look, this looks like it's salvageable, and you get it up to Nick and TJ, and they say, look, we're going to tear it all the ways down to a class 1 on this, bring it all back up again, get it nice and shiny, and then we ship it down to the plant. Then they can do a planned swap, right? Swap that out, put the new one in, take that one out, and do a class 3 on it. Or even get a complete overhaul, whatever it is, and now you start cycling breakers through your facility.
Correct.
That's sweet.
That's
So one thing I'll point out though is you can still purchase new breakers from the plant also on top of those.
Yeah.
So you can still get DS and DS2.
Okay, that's right. You did say that. We still make those. So you could just buy a new one and then put the new one in, and then take this one out and get it overhauled, and keep it as your spare, as your backup.
Yep.
I like that even better. I like that even better because now, yeah, that's a known good. All right. I still find it hard to believe we still make DSs. That's pretty cool. And then to our thing yesterday, you could decide to take that cartridge out and put a Magnum in its place, right?
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you could say, I'm gonna put a brand new breaker and put a brand new breaker, brand new trip unit, and do, what do we call that? A retrofill. Is that a retrofill?
Retrofill is when you got the switch gear.
That's right. No, this will be a retrofit.
It's a replacement.
It's a replacement. It's a replacement. Yeah. Jeez, oh man.
You're close.
I was.
Tom, over in the Power Systems Experience Center, we have a 3-high demo.
Yeah.
So it's a Westinghouse DB25. So that's the breakers from the 50s and 60s. So we have a Westinghouse DB25 as is in the middle portion. On a table next to it is a Class 1 reconditioned DB25 with a solid state trip unit and arc flash reduction maintenance switch. On the above it is a low voltage air replacement breaker, like that.
Yep.
And then below it is the low voltage vacuum starter replacement. So when people are misapplying breakers, they can go with the LVSR, or if they want to replace a breaker, yeah. So like a retrofill's non-reversible, a roll-in replacement, the most it is. You can put the old element back in.
Excellent. All right. See that? See how fast I was? It's like having a quick draw on a PowerPoint. I can just bring it right up. Okay. So, all right. So that's the kit. Great question, Ronald. Thank you very much for that. Off of LinkedIn. That came off of LinkedIn. Right now, Nick and Tom, we're streaming to, I think, 3 sites on Facebook, 1 on LinkedIn, 1 on YouTube. I didn't start Yellow Duck, so we missed Instagram, but we're out there on Twitter. So 6 channels, I think.
Jeremy didn't tell me we were going live.
Yeah, we're live, Nick. Jeez.
I didn't want to make you nervous, Nick. The whole world's watching.
Yeah, the whole world's watching. We've got 17,000 people watching right now. We're bigger than CNN. And we're in 7 different countries, but that's okay. So we talked about this yesterday. We were going to have fame. I was going to do the fame dance, but I'm too small in a cubicle here, so I can't, luckily for everybody. Factory authorized mechanism enhancement. So what are we doing? How are we enhancing? You can tell a mechanical engineer worked on this thing. You know how? Right. The springs. They can't do anything without the springs. K-factor just has to be put into everything. So what are we doing to this puppy for a fame? Factory authorized mechanism enhancement.
You pretty much consider it's similar to this is where we're operating the medium voltage operating mechanism to a more robust mechanism that has hardened parts, thicker parts. They went from laminated to solid parts in it. So this, I guess, came out about 4 years ago. So you can get it with you have to get a class 1, of course. So if you send a VCPW breaker to the PBRC, if you wanted this FAME, this enhancement, you would have to purchase class 1 because we have to take the rest of the breaker apart and, of course, get it plated. But then we would put that new operating mechanism in, and you would have that style of operating mechanism. At the Power Breaker Center, you can get this on medium voltage replacement breakers.
Okay.
So that's like the low voltage air replacement is medium voltage air replacement, where it's vacuum technology. It's based off of VCPW.
Okay.
But that's what this is.
I got you. So send the VCPW to the PBRC PDQ and you'll get it back ASAP. Gotcha.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah.
10 years, 10,000. Not now. You don't want to mess that up. It's not 10,000 years and 10 operations. It's 10 years and 10,000 operations. Boy, could you imagine that one?
Yeah, we're all about extending life, but not that much.
No, that's right. You operate it more than 10 times, you're done, but it'll last for 10,000 years.
That's right.
That sounds like my automobile, my truck warranty, you know? All right. So this is the trip unit. So I'm a big proponent of this because of the arc reduction maintenance switch technologies. I think are for the electrical worker. I think it's that's the cat's meow. I mean, it reduces incident energy considerably. And I get this question a lot when I talk about the value of reducing the clearing time of an arcing current and the amount of energy you're reducing. I get the question of, can I put this on my older breakers? So what's the extent? Are there cases where you say you cannot put these trip units or not add this to an older breaker, or can you pretty much do that to any breaker?
Pretty much any breaker.
Really? Okay. Any manufacturer. So can I put this trip unit on like a GE breaker?
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now,
Whatever there's a retrofit kit designed for, yes.
okay, and it has to be listed because there was a change in Article 240, and you know what? No, it's in the 2023 code cycle. We're going to require in Article 240 for the trip unit to be listed for installation on the breaker. So that is a 2023 code cycle change. And I'd have to find that exact section, to get the exact language, but that is definitely something that we're talking about on Code Panel 10 to address the listing and testing of those trip units, because I think there are some people out there that want to just put anybody's trip unit on any circuit breaker, and that would be a technical term, ungood. So you're saying, Nick, that we have packages to say this trip unit can be put on these models of GE breakers or Square D breakers or whatnot.
Right. Yeah. And I could say between utility relay, AC Pro, and Eaton, you're probably covered.
Okay. Yeah.
I've yet to encounter a model that we can't provide this for. And one thing to talk about on these is when we add these features, the arms and quick trip, we functionally test those features before they go out the door. So we do verify the faster clearing time when we're doing the testing.
Oh, really? Okay. Cool. And yeah, because you have all the test units up there, so it's not as hard to do once you're in that facility. I'm just like feverishly looking for the listing. Here we go. So in the circuit breaker part 7 of the NEC starts the covering of circuit breakers with 240.80, and if you go to, there's arc energy reduction, there's molded case circuit breakers, replacement trip units. Here it is, 240.89, new language. Replacement trip units shall be listed for use with the circuit breaker type in which it is installed, and the informational note says the replacement trip unit can be a listed unit identical to the original or a different trip unit listed for use with the specific circuit breaker. So, and that's brand new language that I believe will go into the 2023 code cycle. I didn't see any comments on this one, so it looks like that's going to be solid.
Oh, good.
So that's a good thing, right? And you know, some people ask me, well, why do you want listing requirements? And it's just the consistency and the testing and whatnot. You want to keep everybody. It's all about the end user, you know, and the performance.
Yep. And Nick brought up a good point, right? So, you know, engineering services, you know, we can buy, you know, many different things. You know, we're not sole sourced to Eaton, right? So, utility relay, you know, it's a well-known name out there, and we do provide that solution on the breaker. So, if the customers are out there, you know, say, hey, I buy standardized and AC Pro, and I, you know, don't want to go with the Digitrips, you know, we can still retrofit the breakers in our PBRCs.
Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah. That's one thing about our engineering services division. And coming from being a product manager in the past, it used to frustrate me because I would see projects and those guys would say, you know, we're using Schweitzer relays, or we're using these and I'm like, no, use ours. I'm like, well, no, the customer didn't want that. So it would frustrate the bejeebers out of me, but I get it. You're serving the customer's needs. So that's
it.
Yeah, it's all about, and it is like almost like a separate consulting firm in some regards, because you do have very easy access to the from a manufacturing perspective and solutions, but you're not tied to that. Although there are some product managers that wishes you were.
Oh yes, yeah. I've many of those conversations.
Absolutely. I've walked through our assemblies and especially when it gets to communications and things like that. There's always those tough discussions. Okay, so we talked about taking complete power circuit breakers, taking them down to the frame, how that process. We talked about the testing of that. We talked about adding trip units. You don't recondition or refurbish the trip unit itself, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
we do not.
Yeah, and that's not permitted by the National Electrical Code either. So that was a new thing that said you can't recondition relays or trip units. So and that's understandable, because that's like you said, you know, Nick, I think it was you said that. You said when in the military, you used to, you know, go to the motherboard and replace components. You just change the whole board out now, right? So yep. Nobody wastes time with that. And that's, I mean, if these trip units anymore, they're all electronics like that. Big green boards or little green boards that are in there. So we hit the trip unit upgrades. We talked about class 1, 1G, 2, and 3 reconditioning, the magnums, the mechanism. And we, you know, Jerry said we were only going to talk about low voltage power circuit breakers, but you guys had to throw in that FAME factory authorized mechanism enhancement for medium voltage VCPWs.
Yep.
Man,
gotta get it in there.
Curveball. That's what we call a curveball.
I got another curveball for you. So medium voltage reconditioning.
Yeah.
We only offer class 1 and 3.
Oh.
We do not offer the class 2. It doesn't make sense because of the size of the breaker.
Okay, so hold on. The class 2 was a combination between 1 and 3.
Yeah, that's low voltage only.
Okay.
And then on the last slide you had up there.
Yeah.
There was something that's specific to here. So down here in the right-hand corner, on the left there, that's a 20 series trip unit, which is part of that's what's installed on the Magnums.
Yeah.
So I used to be in the retrofit group, and when we came up with the arms for the 10 series, which is up in the right corner. I was on the team that came with it, and that's a module that plugs into the side of that trip unit. The more serious engineers, not the tech center, incorporate it into their trip unit, so it's right there. So we recognize that we're going to have customers that want the arc flash reduction on their trip units, and there's going to be a rush on 520. So the only two to have arms built into is a 520 MC and 1150. So we made kits up, go from a 520 to 520 MC with arms, and to go from 1150 without arms to 1150 with arms, and we still carry those kits today. And then when I was in the retrofit group, we got approached by a customer. This is the early 2000s. Somebody had Magnum, and then they bought it with a 520 trip unit, but they wanted an 1150.
Yep.
And they're telling the customer, you got to ship it back to the plant. They didn't want to go to the plant. They were local. So we got with the tech center, and they trained one of our technicians on how to convert a 520 1150, from a 520 to an 1150 trip unit on a Mech.
Okay.
That's like an upgrade. So it's done in-house. We have requests like TJ are just talking about this today. Also, we have requests like we are the owners of the material. So, but we have trained field people to do it in the field. They purchase the material off us like one time. Mostly people will send it here. Yeah, and I thought this was like a thing. It would like how many are we going to see of this? But we've seen a lot over the years. It even happens to this day. It's typically salespeople picking out the wrong trip unit on a new breaker.
But to Nick's point, we highly recommend if there's a customer out there that needs to upgrade their trip unit, is that this gets sent back to the PBRC, right? Because that's it. You think at taking a 520 to 520 MC is pretty easy, but it is extremely complicated. There's lots of wiring, and that's why it goes through the quality checks that we do. So doing this in the field, we will do it under very careful circumstances, put it that way. The recommendation is to get it back into the PBRC.
It is pretty complicated.
Yeah, I can imagine. Just like you said, it's that harness, it's the wiring harness, and it's probably pretty intimate with the circuit breaker mechanisms itself, because you got to wire in and around there.
Yeah, because the majority of the customers that want this is because they bought it with a 520 because of the price, and then as their operations evolved over the years, they want communications and that stuff. So
yeah, and that's that's one of those things, and I talk about this in I did a program just talking about either a safety by design, but the whole concept of designing your system, picking the products with the future in mind. Because if you just design something for how you build it today, you probably, if you do your load calculations and you size all of your equipment for the exact load in your facility today, and you want to add anything to your facility, you're going to have to upgrade your service. It becomes very expensive. But if you at least plan for some longevity in that facility, going from a 520 to a 520 MC is probably, I don't know, but I'm going to knock on wood, it's probably not that expensive in the whole scheme of things, right? So getting stuff like that done up front, I personally like the 520 MC more than the 1150. I just like I don't know what it is about the 520 MC with regard to the chip curve. It seems to have all the stuff, but when you get into the other chip units, you're getting into I think you're getting into more communications. You're getting into whether you can capture waveforms, get trip curves, and actually it's waveform analysis or a higher frequency type of analysis that you can bring back over to a computer. So you're getting those types of functionality. But the 520 MC, I think, is a really good sweet spot. And I should do a program just on that one, just on those trip units, because that could be a whole nother discussion of what are all the different functionality that these trip units can provide. Because you can put all those on any of these breakers too, right? It's you can equip any one of those technologies. I would think. Is that a reach?
Yeah, all new Magnum breakers you can get a 520, 520M, 520 MC, and 1150.
Yeah. Cool beans. All right. What didn't we cover, guys? Did we miss anything?
I think we got it.
Yeah, I can't think of anything.
And it seems that, Jerry, it seems an hour and 20 minutes is about the sweet spot to cover each of these topics, Yeah.
We've been doing good this week.
We didn't BS a lot. We didn't, we pretty much covered, the whole time I was talking about the topic at hand. So I don't think we wasted any time. So
no rabbit holes today.
No rabbit holes. That's right. Yeah, and that's what I'm famous for, rabbit holes. But every now and then you'll get someone who's more famous than you are. So or I am. Anything, was there anything else in the attachments and whatnot that you wanted to talk about? I know you sent over a couple files. We showed the one, Modernization, day 3. We
I think
had,
there is a video link in there, but that just kind of takes you to the switchgear modernization page that shows. I think the video is about 7 or 8 minutes. Kind of shows the Power System Experience Center and runs through the PBRC there in Warrendale.
yeah.
So, but that link is out there. So if anybody wants to go check it out, you can hit the Eaton homepage and
I will
see us in action.
Yeah, I will. And it's on the Eaton home. So what I'll do is I'll put that link out there for everybody. Is that in the PowerPoint?
I don't think it's linked in the Power. No.
Okay. Oh, that was in the Word document.
Yep.
Yeah. Which I thought I had open. Day 3 modernization. It was day 3, right? So, okay, yeah, there it is. Reference links. Power breaker reconditioning, manufacturer, repair, Eaton. Is that it, right? Because what I'll do is I will put that in the chat box. Susan Newman Scarcy, great to see you, Susan. Hope everything is well in Texas. I'm sorry, Tennessee. Geez, almost said Texas. I did say Texas. She's going to shoot me. Excellent. Okay, yeah. So there it is. So that's that link that I just put out there is to this page, which has the Class 1 reconditioning. And it has, and that's not, okay, I thought I was going to say, boy, we might even have a video of Nick Tamburo, I don't know, or TJ.
Oh, are you in that video?
No, I was supposed, but then I had a family emergency, so we had to get 2 of my technicians to do it. So they picked the 6'5" guy and the 5'5" guy.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they did a good job. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and oh, you know what? I think I pilfered out of this video the other day. I'm just trying to find. There we go. We need more shots of the product, not people. There we go. Now look at that. That's a Magnum, right?
Yeah.
That's a Magnum breaker receiving an inspection. Look at him. He's like, I got to pretend like I'm looking at it. You know how these videos go. You know, they say, okay, what do you want me to do? Pretend like you're looking at it. Okay, I'm going to look at it. All right, here's 2 wrenches. Do something with it. I love it. Oh, this is cool. So that video is out there. And I think I don't know if there was another one. Reconditioning. No. Oh, there's a UL guide. What is that about?
Oh, that just takes you to the section 110 about what can be modernized, what can be reconditioned, and what cannot, which is a really important document for anyone that's out there looking at reconditioning, not just circuit breakers, but it does list a lot of different pieces of equipment from, how critical they are to life safety of what cannot be reconditioned.
Yeah, and that's this one here?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, and this talks about the HJ. There we go. Oh yeah, so this gives you all of the. This is basically what we just kind
of talked about.
Yeah, we just talked about this. So that link, I'm going to put that in the notes here in my shunt. Best experience is working in a place where a single LEL sensor shunt trips breakers. No power whatsoever in explosive zone. Got to be careful not to trip that thing by accident. You'd be a bad guy.
Oh,
that would be, we call that being ungood. And you know what? This policy, there's actually a different NEMA policy on reconditioning. We just updated that. Let's try this one. We just updated it, and I think that 2020. So it's a free download. So I'm just going to do this, Control C. I'm going to put this in, and this will be it's all free. So you just accept the terms and conditions, which means that you're going to have to give them your firstborn. And now it looks like a formal document, right? So and I used to be, I was frustrated with this other one because it was, where's it at? It doesn't have the Nemo logo on it, and it doesn't have a date on it. All of this is really good information, and it was used to change the National Electrical Code, right? But NEMA said, hey, you know what? People are going to start recognizing this, so we better formulate a committee, and they updated that. So this is the technical position on reconditioned equipment. And what I like about this is we put in here the 2020 code changes, and we help people understand the definition of reconditioned, and we have updated the list, talk about normal servicing, and we updated the list of what is permitted and what is not permitted to be reconditioned. Now, a lot of people miss this. When the code doesn't say anything about reconditioning, that doesn't mean you can't recondition it. That means there's no prohibition on reconditioning it, but you still have to follow what's in Article 110 from a marking perspective. So I've heard this on motors, and I've heard this on other products saying, I'm not permitted to recondition because it doesn't say I'm permitted to, but it doesn't have to. So the code will tell you what is not permitted. This is your components of assemblies not suitable for reconditioning. So these are all of your molded case circuit breakers is in there. So you're not going to do a molded case, which means you're not also going to do an insulated case, because that is a molded case. A lot of people forget that. And then it tells us what is suitable for reconditioning. And there's your high voltage circuit breakers, your low and medium voltage power breakers, and the sections that are impacted there. So all of those are, that's all, I like this format. So I think that I put it out there. I think I did. Yeah, I put the link to that. So everybody has that one. So, and that's the 3 documents, 3 links. Check out the video, check out the 2 documents, the UL information on that. And I think we covered everything. What do you think, Jerry?
Yeah, I think we got it. I think it's another good day for switchgear modernization on Tech Talk.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to do this now live so that we have it recorded and everything. That was just a practice, right?
Yeah. You guys ready to go?
You're ready to go. The practice runs good. We all feel comfortable. Now let's start it. Beautiful. All right. Well, I don't have anything else unless you guys have anything else. I appreciate you, TJ and Nick, and you, Jerry. You're like clockwork. All except for Friday. We're not going live on Friday, so Friday's session is going to be postponed. And so what's tomorrow's session?
So tomorrow's going to be kind of protective system. So partial discharge with our product InsulGuard, and also our remote monitoring services that we offer as part of that package.
Yes.
So a lot of good information out of there. Lots. The 2 individuals from the partial discharge team have been around the, I think, combined experience together probably well over 100 years.
Wow.
So they're well knowledgeable, very, very technical. So that will be a great conversation to anybody that wants to take a look at partial discharge and get kind of better understanding of it.
That's pretty cool. And remember I told you I worked for engineering services for 1 day? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
That was around remote monitoring, because when I was in the Advanced Product Support Center, I was in charge of Ford account and PPG. And what I learned, and we had Impact Series 3 at the time, and we were moving over to PowerNet. And I would, because, a lot of these guys at those facilities, it was, running the system, doing e-bill, that was the big one, and running energy bills to figure out how much energy it costs to how much money it costs to make a transmission in a Ford plant, or build windshields in a PPG plant, right? So I've been to every one of those plants, Hawkesbury, the whole bit. And I had a hard time getting these guys to run their bills on a monthly basis and divvy them out. So what I used to do is I actually made web pages that would dial into their system, pull their data, emerge it in one of the database, and they could go in and look at a trend of their energy usage by product line, by production line, and generate their bills remotely. And I set all that up, and then Gary Gates called me and said, we want you to man up this business of remote monitoring. And I was like, yeah, I was pumped, because I was using active server pages. I'm like, this is right up my alley. And then they made me product manager of the product. So, but for one day, I worked for engineering services for one day, and I was going to put that on my LinkedIn account, but I'm thinking, no, it probably might show that I can't hold a job. So
January 1st and January 2nd.
Yeah. One day, like, well, you could have all of these great things you did in life. You know what happened? And a hiring manager would go, what happened on this one right here? Why only one day? And you're like, man. So anyway, but yeah, so I'm looking forward to tomorrow's discussion. NHZ boy, I've got an IB thing that conflicts with time. Oh, you're not going to be able to join us tomorrow. Well, you know what? Here's the cool thing. Nick and TJ, all of these sessions are recorded on YouTube. So you can go out to YouTube and get access to all of these videos and any other Eaton Tech Talk. And also it's on my Facebook site. It's on LinkedIn. It's on Twitter. You guys can share it. So remember, hit the thumbs up. And I'm not good at telling people to subscribe, which I'm telling you now after an hour and a half. Subscribe. And if you have to hit the thumbs down because you didn't like it, you got to hit it twice. Just saying. All right. Cool. All right. So last words, Jerry, and then Nick, and then TJ. So last words, Jerry.
No, hey, again, Tom, thanks. TJ, Nick, thanks for joining in tonight. Great overview on the products that really you guys have a responsibility for. Great job. And, Switchgear Modernization Week, this is what it's all about. Just, showcasing, what we can do for our customers and, what solutions, what value we can bring.
Absolutely. Nick.
I just want to thank you for allowing me to be here. I was going to use the hit the like and subscribe button earlier, but I forgot.
You're like me. We always forget.
I could have got that for you.
Yep.
All right.
TJ?
Tom, thanks for hosting. This was a great experience to be a part of, but also thanks for highlighting switchgear modernization. I think it's probably the most exciting thing in the service business that's out there, and we have a good mix of new and used equipment solutions. So being able to talk about those and share those with everybody is great.
Excellent. I appreciate all of you being here. And Jerry, you and I got to talk because the last time I did a week-long event, it was called Shock Week, and we talked shock protection, and I made mugs up. And I called them Shock Week mugs, and I gave them away. So we need a modernization week mug or something to give away. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I gave, we did a contest, and I gave, I think it was 5 mugs away. One of those mugs went to Felix Sandoval, who is in Colombia, South America. That is the most expensive mug I have ever had. Okay, it cost me $250 or almost $300 just to ship it to him in Colombia. So, but we'll try to be careful on that. But we got to come up with a modernization week giveaway or something. I don't know. Something.
No, I love that idea. Yeah. We'll come up with something.
Yeah, and then we'll do it again. We'll do another modernization week, and we'll talk about. What I'd love to do is get like a customer in who's been through modernization or something like that, and talk about the value propositions and stuff. There's Felix. Another mug would be nice. No, I don't know, Felix. You're like on my no ship list anymore, buddy. I love you, brother, but woo.
Tom has one for you. You gotta come get it.
Yeah, you're gonna have to come get it. I love it. Absolutely love it. So thanks for joining in, Felix. So thanks, guys. I don't want to take up too much of your evening. Thanks everybody out there for joining in and in this modernization. And what do you call it, Jerry? You call it we related it to a house. I gotta get my notes.
Renovation.
Absolutely. Renovation Nation. Cool beans. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining in. Thank you, TJ, Nick, and Jerry. Remember, I appreciate everyone who's watching this, what you guys do for electrical safety and the electrical industry. I appreciate your attention to safety, and that's what we're all doing together. So stay safe and please stay healthy in this COVID world. All right, guys and gals, I'm going to sign us off. So give me a second, hit the end screen, and I gotta hit end. Take care.